I'm Father Roland Von Nidda. I'm the chaplain at Arrupe Jesuit University in Harare in Zimbabwe. I'd now like to talk about what Ignatius calls discernment. And the word I use to characterize that is how. Principle and foundation, we saw, is the why of my life. Now we have to ask, how do I live out this why? You know, I'm a particular human being in particular place, in particular circumstances. How do I live my life so that it's in conformity with that why? So that I really do things according to the will of God and find joy and happiness in whatever I do. Now, this is what Ignatius calls discernment. Now, again, it's a very big subject, so I can't go through it. He gives 14 rules for how we do this discernment, to find out, how do I live according to the will of God? How do I know what I'm doing is really according to the will of God? Because I think we all know that in religion, there can be a lot of nonsense spoken in religion. People can say all sorts of things that they think God has said to them, and it's not God at all. So Ignatius says, how do we really know this is coming from God? And when I'm listening to this, I am not listening to myself, but I'm listening to the voice of God and doing the will of God. Now, as I say, he has 14 rules for doing that, but it all, the basics of it, or the bottom line of this, is what Ignatius calls consolation. And he calls it consolation without previous cause. That you know that you are listening to the will of God, the voice of God, when you experience deeply within yourself, not shallow, nice, emotional feelings, but a very, very deep feeling of what he calls consolation, a great peace, a great joy, a great love. When you try and go deeper in your life, into that center of your life, where we find God. And he calls it consolation without previous cause, because there's nothing that causes it. You can't say, oh, I felt so consoled because I won the lottery or something. There's no reason you can give for it. It just comes out of the blue, and you know it's coming from the Spirit of God. Now, when you experience that, you know you are in the Spirit of God and you are listening to the voice of God. So when you want to make decisions in life, Ignatius calls this election. If you want to make a big decision, you've got to do it so that you're listening to this voice of God and making sure that I'm making this decision because it is the will of God. It's the right thing to do. So you use this discernment process, as well as you look at all the factors involved in whatever decision you're making. Look at all the pros, look at all the cons, look at all the advantages, the disadvantages, all the consequences if I make this decision or that decision. And then bring it to God in prayer. And where you feel this deep peace, this deep consolation, you know that's the way to follow. That's the voice of God. So again, it's a very practical thing, and I'd encourage you all really to try and do this. You do this not only when you're making big decisions, but everyday life. Ignatius has a practice called the examen. Every day we're looking at ourselves. Am I living according to the why? According to the will of God? You look at what you've done in the day, your feelings in the day. What were the good things that led me to God? What were the bad things that led me away from God? So the whole time I'm reviewing my life to make sure I live my life according to the will of God. So I'd encourage you to try really to learn more about this and really to try and practice this, to make it a daily practice as Ignatius encourages us to do.